please remain standing for the invocation by Kathy.
May we always remember the high price paid for our freedom that cost others their lives. Lord, today bless those who have served and continue to serve with favor and bounty. May it meet their needs and watch over their families. Help us to live our lives in ways that glorify you. Give us strength to be a blessing in someone's life today and grant the opportunity to lead others into the freedom that can be found in knowing you, O Lord. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
If there's anybody in the room who follows NCAA football, I know there's a little Big Ten team here in Ann Arbor, but I was born and raised in Georgia, and there's another team there in the SEC. Dale asked me specifically to sing the battle hymn today, and I'm happy to do that, but I'm just going to forewarn you that I give no apologies if the words accidentally move into Glory, Glory to Old Georgia. It's just happened.
Thank you so much, Doris and Tom. And thank you, Lynn, for bringing them from your church over here. I'm going to ask the person who has, as of this moment, the longest continuous perfect attendance streak in this club right now, Dick Benedict, to come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, President William. I would just ask if those of you who are veterans all at the same time would stand, please, so that we can recognize you and thank you for your service. With a round of applause. I wasn't about to hum Anchors Away. It's a real honor to introduce our guest speaker today, U.S. Army Colonel John Wojcik, who is the General Counsel of the Michigan National Guard. Colonel Wojcik is married, has 3 children, has a number of addresses. One of them is in Ann Arbor, but most of the time he is in Lansing. He is a graduate cum laude of Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Not the IU that we're familiar with, but Indiana University of Pennsylvania. He's a cum laude graduate of that school. And also while he was there, he was enrolled in the Reserve Officers Training Corps and was commissioned in the Reserve as a distinguished military student. Subsequently, he received a Juris Doctorate from Cooley Law School, and he's taught a number of courses at Cooley, and he was admitted to the Michigan Bar in 1997. He has a number of military achievements, awards, and I can tell you from personal experience that these are not easy to come by, because I certainly never figured out a way to get one. He has the Meritorious Service Award, the Achievement Award, the Bronze Star, and since he was fortunate enough to serve for a year in one of the world's most popular vacation lands, he also has the Afghanistan Campaign Medal. How lucky can you be, right? He is going to tell us a little bit about what the National Guard is all about and what they're up to here in Michigan. Sir? All present and accounted for. Well, let's see if everyone would please stand for a moment and give our speaker a nice round of applause.
I've been in the military for 28 years. Most of that time has been in the National Guard. I was in the National Guard in Pennsylvania, and most of my service has been in the Michigan National Guard. We have 3 primary missions in the National Guard. We protect the homeland, we build global partnerships, and we fight our nation's wars. The National Guard is a little bit different than the active duty Army in this homeland security mission that we have. Actually, right now, we have a 75-person unit of engineers up in the UP rebuilding roads. We had roads that washed out, so they're up there doing those things. They do that in a state status where they report directly to the governor. So we have the governor, the adjutant general, who's my boss, who's a 2-star, and we mobilize these National Guard personnel. They go up, and the state of Michigan pays them, right? They get paid state of Michigan employees during that time period to go and do that domestic mission. When we go overseas and fight wars, we're in a federal status where we report to the Department of Defense and the President. So we're this interesting, kind of like the platypus of the military, right? It kind of looks like a dog, but we like water. It can't really. So we do all these different things. We have all these different missions, and we are here among you. Right, we're here among you. We have 11,000 folks in the Michigan National Guard, 11,000. We have around 3,000 personnel that are full-time or on active duty like me to kind of run the shop when everybody else is coming and going. So as we do that, we prepare for the homeland mission. We prepare to take care of the state of Michigan. We take care of the state of Ohio if Ohio needs it. One of our other partnerships that we have is with the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands, we have personnel down there helping them recover from the hurricanes. We've established a interstate partnership with them where we have their entire aviation unit, all of their helicopter pilots are now up here in Michigan because their hangar is destroyed down there, so they're up here flying missions up here so we can maintain their flying status until they get everything fixed, we can send it back home. So it's a pretty amazing thing what we do. It's absolutely fantastic to be a part of it. Before September 11th, I was a private practice attorney in Lansing. I worked at Fraser Chabelcock, and I was doing med-mal defense and auto-neg defense. And it was great, it was fun, right, exciting. But after September 11th, I quit and came on board full-time as a general counsel here in Michigan in 2002. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life, right? I don't go to work every day, right? This is my passion. I love what I do. I work with people that that are all kind of rowing the boat the same direction. Every now and then you get somebody that's kind of trying to go a different direction, but it is absolutely a fantastic thing to be a part of. And in your organizations, in your churches, in your businesses, you are going to have people or spouses or family members of personnel in the Michigan National Guard, or maybe in the Army Reserves. And it's helpful to understand what they go through, because they work full-time jobs, and 1 weekend a month they go and they do their military drills on Saturdays and Sundays, sometimes Fridays. And then for 2 weeks during the summer they maintain their collective training. And we push and pull them all the time to do these different things as well. And they have to work for you, right? They have to have a family, and they work for us. And every now and then we get sent to Afghanistan or Iraq or some other place. I lived in a tent for 10 months when I was over in Afghanistan, right? A tent. Not cool. I'm a lawyer, right? Where I get my coffee. So, but it is important what we do. It's a great thing to be a part. It's a great thing to be a part of. And again, it's the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. So, a little bit more about what we do. We have 3 Air National Guard bases: one in Battle Creek, one in Alpena, and one in Selfridge Air National Guard Base. We have KC-135 air refueling aircraft and A-10 attack aircraft that you saw. We have a bunch of helicopters and all that stuff too. And our main Army posts are at Fort Custer, and then up at Camp Grayling, which is the largest National Guard training post in the country, which is pretty awesome stuff. So, now, any pilots here? Okay, a couple. So, up at Grayling, we can actually fly aircraft in, drop bombs and ordnance and shoot bullets, right? And have troops on the field moving underneath them. And all of this FAA coverage, we have to have special safety umbrellas and everything to allow that to happen. They take off from Alpena, they come fly over Grayling, live stuff, troops moving underneath. We train as we fight. It's absolutely amazing stuff what we do. Zero tolerance for defect kind of environment when you're doing that kind of stuff. So these are your people. These are people that again, in your churches, work in your businesses. So if you see them, you bump into one, thank them for what they're doing, because it is not easy, folks. It's not easy. Can you imagine if you had to work 1 weekend a month for 20 years, right? Or what would I have to pay you not to go to Afghanistan for a year, right? You're working in whatever your office is, and somebody comes up and says, hey, John, guess what? You're going to Afghanistan for a year. What would you pay not to have to do that, right? So these people, they volunteer to go do these things to protect our country and to protect the state of Michigan and to maintain the balance as citizen soldiers. So with that said, I'm going to go open up the floor to questions until the president yanks me here. So.
National Guard troops have been sent down to their southern border. Have any of our Michigan National Guard been stationed there?
The Michigan National Guard has not sent anybody down to the southern border mission. Again, we are a state asset. We report to the governor, and the president would have to work through the governors to be able to execute that, and we have not received that request.
A question, Bob Gray. We see troops coming back and forth from Grayling. Are most of those Michigan National Guard, or are they coming to Camp Grayling from all over the country?
They come from all over the country. We have active duty personnel that come all the way from Fort Knox to go up to Camp Grayling to train, because it's that awesome. I mean, we have a bunch of stuff that we can do up there. Ohio National Guard, Illinois Guard, Pennsylvania Guard, they will all be coming across.
Were some of the pictures from Grayling?
Yes, yes.
Looked too green to be almost anyplace else.
Now, the ones with the rockets, those were, it said Iraq. We weren't really in Iraq. We were someplace else. But yeah, that was an actual live overseas deployment.
The Camp Grayling has a tank training course that's open to the public, or has been in the past at various times. Is that still open? I've had some friends that went on it, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah, Camp Grayling does have one of the few tank ranges in the National Guard. We don't get a lot of tank traffic up there now because Fort Knox has been reorienting some of their tanks. The coolest thing to go up to Grayling to see is when they launch those multiple launch rocket system rockets at night, right? I mean, they only fly them 20 miles. They can go. I mean, you could hit Detroit from here with those suckers. But in the darkness of night, it is an amazing thing to see. So if you can find out when they're shooting them to get up there, it's pretty cool stuff. The city of Grayling has all that stuff posted on their newspaper website.
How often has the National Guard been used overseas for current conflicts? And has that increased in recent times, or is it historically the same?
That's a good question. After the active duty drawdown after Vietnam, the National Guard went from a strategic reserve to an operational reserve, which means that if we have a big war, the Army can't fight the war on its own. It needs the National Guard. The National Guard has all of the combat arms. We have the tanks, aircraft, infantry units. Anything that's sharp or pointy or that goes boom, that's in the National Guard. The reserves typically has transportation, the logistics type things. So when there's any engagement out there, you will find a National Guard service member out there with the active duty. And we have personnel with, I have friends that have served, they've done three combat deployments in the last 10 years.
What percentage of persons in the National Guard are women, and are they allowed in combat?
Women are allowed in combat. The Department of Defense opened that up about 24 months ago, and within 8 weeks we had our first female lieutenant go through the infantry basic course at Fort Benning, Georgia. So the branch is open for anything, and women are actively serving in the capacities. Quite honestly, they should have been serving for quite some time. As far as the percentages go, I don't know that number.
Okay.
George Gilligan, as a former Air National Guard alumnus, I spent 8 summers up at Phelps College, which was, every summer was quite interesting.
The guys who fly the Warhawks and the tankers, do they really only fly once a month?
Oh no.
I wondered.
We deploy the pilots about every 24 months. They'll deploy and they'll do a 6-month tour. And they come back. We have a reset cycle, and then a ready cycle, and then a deployment cycle, and it depends which bucket they're in. And typically, we'll fall in on aircraft overseas and take the pilots and the maintenance crew. But they deploy quite a bit, especially the A-10s.
Do you receive specific training for deployment within the United States in the event of civil unrest, and what's historically its been the track record there?
The civil unrest training is actually something that we do the training for. The National Guard is one of our hallmark missions, and we do that training in-house. It's required. Congress mandates that we do so many hours and so many days of crowd control, riot suppression type training each year, and we do all that internally. That's one of our primary missions. It's an annual requirement.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you personally do? You said you're general counsel, and what does that entail?
All right, well, it's everything. You can imagine with 11,000 personnel and 3 Air Force bases. I mean, we have 3 airports, right? 3 airports with 3 air traffic controllers and all these airplanes coming and going, and military property all over the place. And on any given day, on any given weekend, we have a couple hundred vehicles on the road moving around. So they get into car accidents. We have fuel contaminant spills. We have environmental issues. We have new weapon systems that come online that we have to do environmental impact requirements and investigations to do. People get sued. I do a lot of the legislative matters with the governor's office and with the legislature. I testify probably 8 or 10 times a year in the Senate or the Senate or their House, depending on how those bills impact the National Guard or our military protections in the state. So I do everything. It's a true general counsel's office. All the litigation that comes in, I process. I send it either to the Attorney General's office or to the U.S. Department of Justice. They actually try the cases, and I just make sure they don't screw it up.
Dick Smith. I was with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for many years as a civilian. I worked in a cleanup project in the Upper Peninsula of a river after flooding. Do you work with the Army Corps on that flooding that you're working with in the Upper Peninsula now, or have you in the past?
We work with them. We're doing a project right now. I can't really get into details concerning the Sioux Locks with the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's not really matured enough that I'm not clear to talk about it. But when we have a road rebuilding operation, depending on the scale, with what's going on in the UP right now, one engineering company is big enough to take care of it. So typically, we will be the ones to do that. We work with the Army Corps of Engineers infrequently and only on very significant projects.
Thank you. My name is Pat Muir. I'd like to know what and who determines the need for the National Guard to come into civil disobedience or civil correction programs, and just how long do you go in for those particular activities?
So the civil unrest matters that the National Guard is very adept at doing. We get called up from the governor's office. The governor declares a state of emergency and authorizes my boss, Major General Vadney, to mobilize the Guard to respond. When we do that, we respond in assistance of law enforcement. Right? We're not there to enforce the laws of the land. We're not there to arrest people, detain people. We're there to basically plus up the police departments that have been overwhelmed. And sometimes that means that we're doing a traffic control point or show of force issues where you'll just see National Guard personnel walking around with radios and whatnot to be the eyes and ears of the police force to make sure that the riots don't get out of control and whatnot.
Okay, thank you so much.
Would you be available on football Saturdays here?
Believe it or not, there are people there. You just don't see them.
So, Colonel, you're from Pennsylvania, right?
Yes.
I had to really look hard for a cup that was made in Pennsylvania. This is the only one made in Pennsylvania.
This is the only one.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.